Hello everyone, dear followers, welcome to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love to have you in our community. I appreciate you all so much, and I hope you enjoy today's video. The celebrity world is buzzing again with a twist nobody saw coming. Cemre and her ex-husband, Gökberk Yildirim, are back in the spotlight after a solemn day in Istanbul turned into the week's most debated story. What happened this time? Cemre's absence from the funeral held for Gökberk's grandmother, who recently passed away in Italy, sparked a storm of reactions across social media and insider circles. The decision not to attend split fans right down the middle, and the disagreement reached into the family's inner circle. Some called it a snub. Others argued it was a boundary. And yet, like so many moments in their history, silence became the loudest sound. The funeral took place at a historic mosque in Istanbul, a place where tradition and memory hold hands. The ceremony drew familiar faces from art, politics, and business. Under a soft haze of winter light, camera flashes caught the strain on the family's faces. Gökberk, usually so composed, broke down, his voice trembling as he greeted mourners and tried to stand tall. His parents, leaning into each other for support, wore that heavy kind of grief you recognize even from a distance. It was a day that demanded presence, reverence, and tenderness. And yet one absence was all anyone could talk about. Cemre was not there. The actress who once shared a home, a future, and vows with Gökberk didn't step through the mosque gates. The question raced from whisper to headline: why didn't Cemre come? After the service, Cemre posted only one thing on social media, a stark black background with a single carnation symbol. No caption. No tags. No location. Just that quiet image. But rather than soothing the noise, it threw gasoline on the fire. Was it her way of offering condolences from afar? Was it a coded protest? Was it a boundary drawn after years of complications? According to murmurs in showbiz circles, the choice was entirely personal, a line she needed to keep for her own peace. It's no secret the divorce had been painful. The period when everything seemed to unravel, the whispers, the press, the uncertainty, left marks behind. And yes, the name that keeps resurfacing in every thread of their story did come up again: Sarah Bluma. The crisis associated with her had stretched the marriage to its thinnest point, and the aftermath never truly ended. Friends close to Cemre say she wrestled with the decision for days. One confidant described it like this: Cemre respects the family deeply and loved the grandmother in her own way. But after everything that happened, showing up might have sent the wrong message. It wasn't defiance. It was careful. Those who have watched Cemre's career rise know she is measured in public, expressive in private, and intensely protective of her boundaries. She has always tried to put distance between personal wounds and public spectacle. But that distance doesn't come without fallout, and when grief arrives, people expect old boundaries to bend. Inside the mosque courtyard, after the final prayers and tearful embraces, the absence stung in ways no camera could capture. Those close to Gökberk say he was deeply hurt. He reportedly told friends in a small, tense circle, "On a day like this, a condolence would have been human." It wasn't a press statement, he hasn't made one. But the words, whispered in grief, traveled far. Some sources insisted he saw her decision as both painful and disrespectful, recalling how much his grandmother had cherished cordiality and ceremony. Others insisted he understood but couldn't help feeling abandoned at the worst possible moment. Then came the mother's words. After the ceremony, as mourners filed out, his mother, without speaking Cemre's name, shared a sentiment that resonated: in times of loss, old conflicts should be put aside. We hoped for a small gesture, just a sign of respect. Not coming leaves a mark. Everyone chooses their path, but grief remembers. The remark spread like a signal flare. It wasn't loud, but it could be heard by anyone who needed to hear it. People began picking sides online. Some rallied behind Cemre: she has no obligation to be there. They're divorced. Her life is her own. Others pushed back hard: funerals are above personal dramas. This was about humanity. Opinion pieces, morning shows, panel debates, everyone weighed in. Comment sections became battlegrounds of compassion, anger, and projection. The storyline became bigger than the funeral. It became a referendum on boundaries after a breakup, on what we owe to the families we leave behind, on whether silence can be respectful or only cruel. And then, as if the story needed yet another international layer, the Italian press picked it up. Headlines there emphasized the bond Cemre had once had with the grandmother. Years ago, during visits to Italy, Cemre had been photographed by the sea with her, sharing simple, domestic moments away from red carpets and cameras. Some Italian outlets framed the absence as a missed chance for closure. Others suggested it reflected the reality of a relationship that had ended and would never again resume polite rituals for the sake of appearances. While people argued about what Cemre owed to the day, attention swung sharply toward one name, Sarah Bluma. Nobody expected Sarah to attend, and yet gossip shows spun the question anyway: would it have been more appropriate for Cemre to come than for any old acquaintance? Some speculative voices went further, suggesting that Cemre's absence could pave the way for Sarah to grow closer to the family again, especially in a time when condolences often reopen old doors. A few tabloids even teased the idea that sorrow can revise alliances, and that a careful word, a respectful visit, or a subtle message might matter more than it should. Not everyone bought that story, of course. But the suggestion alone was enough to create yet another wave of conversation. Meanwhile, those close to Cemre describe her as torn. One friend insisted, Cemre adored Gökberk's grandmother. Truly. But she worried that showing up would be read like a statement about her and Gökberk, not about saying goodbye. She didn't want cameras to turn a farewell into a headline about reconciliation or rivalry. It wasn't coldness, it was restraint. And restraint is a complicated thing in a world that keeps score of gestures. For days, the debate raged in studios and on timelines. Some voices defended her with resolve: Cemre has built her own life. She can't keep orbiting the past out of duty. Others pushed a hard truth: a funeral is sacred. You set aside history for an hour and stand there, if only for the woman who showed you kindness. It echoed like a chorus, the right to draw lines versus the duty to cross them when grief calls. Even behind the scenes, the ripple effects were felt. Producers whispered about whether Cemre's next appearance should address the silence or let it pass like wind. Stylists and publicists fielded calls from magazines bargaining for a cover story with a respectful angle. Paparazzi tried to capture some tiny clue, a flower delivery, a discreet visit, a shadow behind a gate. But if there were private gestures, they were protected, and no camera found proof. For his part, Gökberk devoted himself to family duties after the service. Final arrangements, relatives arriving from abroad, quiet hours in the living room where her photograph now rests beside a prayer bead and a candle. In those moments, it wasn't about headlines. It was about memory, rinse and repeat days of grief, and the inevitable emptiness of a chair at the table. Those who love him say he's processing it all in layers. The loss itself, the public scrutiny, the old wounds, and the fresh ones created by the absence of someone who once knew every corner of his life. The conversation didn't stop at blame, it spilled into larger reflections. Can two people who shared everything find a simple way to honor loss without reopening pain? Should the public expect reconciliation light, moments that deliver narrative closure even when private lives don't? Does a carnation on a black background count as empathy, or is it a shield against the crowd? And does every choice made by women in public life get measured with harsher rulers, especially when their calm looks like indifference to those who want a tear, a bow, a hand on a shoulder captured for posterity? One detail that fueled talk shows was the way that little carnation symbol seemed to echo the grandmother's favorite bloom. Close friends confirmed she loved red carnations. Unpretentious, resilient, elegant without trying. Some said the post was a quiet tribute that only those who knew her would understand. Others dismissed it as a gesture too small for a day too big. And so the story grew, fed by fragments and interpretations. We heard from a family acquaintance who insisted there was no ill will, only pain. Everyone is hurt, they said. And when everyone is hurt, even good choices feel wrong. We heard from a longtime fan who remembered seeing Cemre and a grandmother together years ago. She called her "my darling girl" in the warmest way, the fan recalled. I don't think she stayed away because she didn't care. And we heard, too, from those who remember the worst days of the breakup and felt that forgiveness, while noble, doesn't always come with an invitation. As the week went on, certain truths settled. There was no official statement from Gökberk. No press release from Cemre. No reunion. No dramatic showdown. Just a day of mourning, a missing face, a single symbolic post, and a set of questions that probably won't be answered on any timeline. Still, every commentator seemed to agree on one point: this was about more than etiquette. It was about navigating the sharp edge between history and healing. Cemre chose distance. Gökberk chose tradition. And the space between those choices was where all the noise lived. By the weekend, curiosity pivoted back towards Sarah Bluma once again. Some insiders claimed she sent condolences through mutual friends, that her message was brief and respectful. Others speculated she might attend a private memorial in Italy, if invited. That thought alone rekindled old theories about whether grief reunites people who once caused each other so much strain. Whether any of it is true is another question. But in the realm of rumor and remembrance, even a whisper can shape a narrative. What we can say with certainty is this: the family laid their beloved to rest with dignity. The city watched. And the absence that day became a story, because stories are how we try to understand what hurts. Will Cemre and Gökberk ever address it? Maybe. Or maybe they'll let it fade into the private archive shared by two people who once tried to build forever and learned how fragile forever can be. For now, the last word belongs to that single carnation on a wordless screen, a symbol that might be apology, might be tenderness, might be a way of saying goodbye without reopening a wound. And maybe that's all it was meant to be. We've come to the end of our video, my loves. If you felt the emotion in this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Your thoughts matter here. Do you think Cemre should have attended no matter what, or was her quiet gesture enough? Tell me below, and as always, thank you for watching. See you in the next one.